Welcome to War Room Impeachment. It is Wednesday, the 4th of December, 2019. We're broadcasting live from the Breitbart Embassy here on Capitol Hill, just steps away from where the Judiciary Committee has been hearing from the three so-called constitutional experts and what seems like only one actual constitutional expert. This is episode 58 of War Room Impeachment, broadcasting on the John Fredericks Radio Network and americasvoice.news. If you fancy seeing our ugly mugs, americasvoice.news has the video live stream of this show. We're going wild on the web right now. The traffic to warroom.org is absolutely crazy, and I can absolutely see why. You may have heard at the beginning of the show, Stephen K. Bannon won't be joining us. Thank you, producer Dan, for announcing it right at the beginning of the show. But we do have Jason Miller. We do have Jack Maxey sitting here in the War Room. In the second part of the show, we'll have Greg Mans, also from the War Room, who's been, the two of these guys have been working hard all day, while Jason and I have just been sort of kicking our feet up, watching the televisions. The site traffic to warroom.org, guys, is on fire right now. I don't know that we've ever had, actually, this many concurrent users on the site. And the reason for that is twofold. The stories we've had up, thanks to Jack and Greg, I'm just the one who hits publish. They're the ones who actually do the research. But the stories about, this is not me distancing myself, I wholly endorse your work, Jack. The stories about the Democrats' experts, their constitutional experts in the Judiciary Committee today, Pamela Karlan and Noah Feldman, are absolutely going wild right now, and I can see why. Today's been fascinating as far as, I think, the impeachment process and where it is in terms of momentum is concerned. It felt very deflated today. Jason, want to come to you first, and then Jack, we'll talk about your catch on Pamela Karlan. Jason, we've been sitting here watching these Judiciary Committee hearings all day today. They have the panel of four. They have these constitutional experts up there. Three of them, Democrats, very clearly donated to Democrats. They are partisans, to say the least. And Jonathan Turley up there, who opened his whole thing today by saying, you know, I didn't vote for Trump. I actually voted against Trump, and really represented a more moderate, neutral vision of what impeachment is supposed to look like. What stood out for you, Jason, today?
Well, I think, namely, that the Democrats were so underprepared for the fact that this is a televised hearing. I think a lot of this goes back to the fact that Jerry Nadler doesn't know what he's doing and isn't up to the task. Obviously, after the Corey Lewandowski beatdown from over the summer, then they moved things over to Adam Schiff in an attempt to try to save this. Otherwise, normally it would have gone through Judiciary. But the Democrats brought out, maybe on paper, Raheem, they look good. But there are three very left of center, very liberal, very well published legal jurists who absolutely at their core hate President Trump and everything that he stands for. And that shone through right away. Whereas, as you pointed out, Jonathan Turley, the GW law professor, which, by the way, GW better not abandon the Colonials nickname out of PC issues, even though it's a dumb nickname, but I went to GW undergrad. But the fact that Jonathan Turley was so well polished and so ready for TV, he was head and shoulders above the rest of the pack the Democrats brought out.
Let's. I want to play a clip real quick from Pamela Karlan. This is one of these Democrats, experts, donor to, I think, Elizabeth Warren's campaign, and a previous big donor to Hillary Clinton. Let's hear.
And a shortlister, but was considered for a possible Supreme Court pick by President Obama in 2009, and was the lefty's choice.
Amazing. Imagine this person being on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so I was struck. I came in from the airport yesterday, and I got off the bus from Dulles down at L'Enfant Plaza, and I walked up to the hotel. And as I was walking past what used to be the old post office building and is now the Trump Hotel, which I had to cross the street, of course.
Are you staying there?
God, no. Never.
This is who they're putting up as their unbiased constitutional law expert, Pamela Karlan. They're saying she had to cross the street to get away from the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C., that God knows she would never stay there. And some of the things she said previously, you're going to want to pay very close attention to this out there, that we're going to play on the show later on in the show. Some of the things she said are not just anti-Trump. They're not just anti-conservative. They're overtly racist. They're anti-white. She is addressed major crowds of people at the American Constitution Society and made overtly racist comments about white people. This is who Jerry Nadler wants representing the Democrats today, Jason?
Yeah, and it even went a step worse, Raheem, when we talk about the comments that she made about Barron Trump, President Trump and Melania's 13-year-old son, which were absolutely unconscionable, and which Melania Trump just tweeted a short while ago, just about 10 minutes ago, a response to that. And so, Raheem, when you, if we have that clip ready to go, or do we...
you want to read the Melania tweet, or you want to go to the clip? We can do whatever you want, Jason.
Yeah, let's go to the clip, and I'll tell you what Melania Trump responded with.
No, we better go to Melania's response first.
Okay. So Melania Trump responded back to Professor Karlan saying, a minor child deserves privacy and should be kept out of politics. Pamela Karlan, you should be ashamed of your very angry and obviously biased public pandering and using a child to do it. This is from the First Lady of the United States going directly at this unhinged, crazy whack job liberal jurist who, Raheem, as we get to here, this is only tip of the iceberg for some of the crazy that she's dished out over the years.
Let's listen to what she said today.
Who does not give him the power to do anything he wants. And I'll just give you one example that shows you the difference between him and a king, which is the Constitution says there can be no titles of nobility. So while the president can name his son Baron, he can't make him a baron.
I mean, just totally gratuitous attack on a 13-year-old boy. I mean, I think that speaks to her character, and in a minute we'll go to what Congressman Matt Gaetz said in response to Pamela Karlan. But this is a Stanford Law School professor who's out there overtly making racist comments, attacking children. And this is who Jerry Nadler puts up in the judiciary today. Let's wind it back a little bit, because I'm not going to say that Democrats didn't have any momentum vis-a-vis the public hearings. There was some polls that showed a little movement, some polls that showed no movement, some polls that showed movement the other way. But in their optimistic dreams, they still believed that they had some legitimacy, some moral high ground, some standing with this impeachment process. The more I think about it, the more I reflect on what we watched today, I feel like Nancy Pelosi's worst fears may have been confirmed, is that Jerry Nadler and putting Jerry Nadler in charge of this process has derailed the whole thing.
Absolutely. And it was so bad that just one example, when Jerry Nadler brought up to Jonathan Turley about if we had George Washington in here as one of the jurists. And I don't know what Democrats, and particularly Nadler, were thinking with this entire hearing, because number one, the American people do not like being lectured to. They view these ivory tower liberals as coming in and preaching them. They get a whole bunch of money to sit there and think about new liberal thought ideas. And basically, like I said, the American people don't want to be lectured to, but also, too, they don't necessarily want this history lesson of here's what the framers were debating, and completely random topics that may or may not even apply. And as Jonathan Turley beat down, he said, hey, look, your definitions on some of this stuff is just completely wrong. But it was boring. It was slow. It
wasn't boring in the good way, right? In the they understand the Constitution way. They didn't even understand. They all kicked off talking about impeachment as a term and a phrase that emanated from the United Kingdom, from Britain's Parliament. They couldn't even get those points correct. They were saying things like the tyrant king. Who was that? A tyrant king? No matter what sort of revisionist history is being taught in public schools nowadays, it was the king and Parliament together that were doing these things. That's why there was an impeachment, prospective impeachment available in Britain back then. How do they get these things so wrong?
Well, I think they don't understand that there's a fundamental disagreement between prosecutors and law enforcement and academics. And what we saw today, this is why Hillary Clinton lost, people. we had a whole bunch of academics. I mean, this is what higher education looks like in America right now, particularly at the legal level. But the Democrats thought that having these liberal professors come in and lecture to the American people was going to work, and it face planted. Jack, I mean, what are your thoughts here?
Well, listen, I mean, if you look at Carlin particularly, she was talking about impeaching the president before he was even sworn in. She's quoted in an article in the San Francisco Gate in December of 2016 saying, if he invades a country because they put windmills outside his golf course, that would be a conflict of interest. If he decides not to enforce labor laws to protect workers at Trump casinos, that is a violation of his oath of office. It's the difference between having a king and having a president. But even if Trump did any of those things, he wouldn't be prosecuted, Carlin said. The only recourse would be impeachment. The guy hasn't even been sworn in, and she's talking about impeaching him.
I want to go to this clip now that, Jack, you found from the American Constitution Society for Law and Policy. I believe, if I'm correct, Pamela Carlin is now the chairman of the board of this organization, but I think it was, what year was it, 2006?
2006.
She was giving a speech there, a little bit more sprightly than she was today. I want people to listen very closely. This is probably not going to be the only time I play it on this show. I think this speaks to the character of the types of people that Jerry Nadler is putting up as constitutional law experts.
We have to seize back the high ground on patriotism and on love of our country, because we have more reason than they do to love America. The rich, pampered, prodigal, sanctimonious, incurious, white, straight sons of the powerful do pretty well everywhere in the world, and they always have. But what about us? Snarky, bisexual Jewish women who want the freedom to say what we think, read what we want, and love whom we do.
I don't understand. Is she saying that bisexual Jewish women have more right to love America than white people do? Why is it a trade-off? Why can't everyone just love America? Why does she have to attack white people? And again, why is this the type of person that Jerry Nadler is putting in charge of the? She was probably going to be the Fiona Hill of today, right? She's the torchbearer as far as the Judiciary Committee is concerned today.
Yeah, and I think it face planted. I don't think it went over well at all, but it came through, especially when they asked the question about who did you vote for in 2016, and she started throwing a conniption fit, saying, well, I don't have to go and say who I voted for, and it really made it a much bigger scene than it needed to be. But again, it's you just have to wonder who on the Judiciary Committee thought this was going to be a good idea. Again, not just these individual selections, but just to bring in a whole bunch of ivory tower academics and have them lecture to the American public about how they know more than everybody else does. It was destined for failure.
I do have another question, and Jack, I want to bring you in on this as well. Is that why did we not know this stuff about these people beforehand? You know, where are the Republican research types, the Oppo research types? What is going on at the RNC? What is going on in the White House? Why did people not know this stuff about Pamela Carlin before it goes up on warroom.org this afternoon?
Well, exactly. And you go to the other point that what both Greg and Jack found with the article about Noah Feldman, which, Raheem, you did a great piece on, talking about his loving embrace of Sharia law. And folks, you can't make this up. I mean, go to warroom.org and read these stories. See the clip about Professor Carlin. Read the story from Professor Feldman and his embrace of Sharia law. I mean, Raheem, this is just nuts. Like, how is this representative of anyone in the 31 districts that are held by Democrats and districts that Trump won in 2016? They had to have been cringing.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You're a campaign guy, you're a comms guy. You've done all this stuff. If you're going into an election year, when you have a very big public event like this taking place, if your boss said, right, we're going to have Pamela Carlin, Noah Feldman, what would your reaction be? Wouldn't you immediately say, stop, think about who we're trying to appeal to, and think about the seats we're trying to hold.
Right. I'd say hold your hand about 6 inches in front of your face and smack the heck out of yourself before you follow through with this terrible idea. What the Democrats should have done is they should have gotten rock solid Republicans who have taken the position that President Trump should be impeached. Proven jurists, maybe even if they could get folks who are members of the Federalist Society or have been endorsed by the Federalist Society in the past, those types, to come forward. And look, even if they're
got David French up there.
Exactly. Even if they're Bush Republicans, those types, go ahead and bring them up and have them make that case and say, look, even Republicans, because no Republicans defected in the vote to move forward with impeachment. And so Democrats, Raheem and Jack, this all goes back to the Will Hurd test. Unless you're coming forward with new information or new arguments that will move a member like Will Hurd to go against the president, then it's really all for naught.
So why do you call it the Will Hurd test? You know, we have new listeners joining us every day, Jason. They may not have heard about Hurd. Give us the skinny. Why is there a Will Hurd test to any of this stuff?
Yeah, so Will Hurd is a retiring congressman from Texas. He represents that border district. I think it goes somewhat like 600 or 700 miles along the border between Texas and Mexico. And he's been an outspoken critic of President Trump. He's someone who fervently disagrees with President Trump's immigration policy and has raised a number of questions about everything going on with Ukraine drama and been pretty pointed in his criticism both of the president, Mayor Giuliani, and other folks in President Trump's orbit. But he came out very definitively at the end of that last hearing that we had and said the evidence is not there to push forward with impeachment. And so if he's that swing vote, so to speak, if he's a Republican that maybe there's a chance that Democrats can get to move, if he's not moving, that tells you they haven't put forward enough evidence to actually go through this. And again, he has an intel background. He's former CIA. And so that's when I say the Will Hurd test, that's a reflection of the fact that Democrats have been completely unable to come up with either evidence, there's zero evidence, anything, or pervasive arguments that would get a Republican who maybe doesn't really like President Trump to move against him.
Maybe there should be a Professor Turley test as well. I want to go to what the only person on the 4-person panel who was not, I think, tarnished by overtly partisan statements, racist statements, which was Jonathan Turley. And we've noted Jonathan Turley's approach to this on the show over the last couple of weeks on CBS. I think he's been saying certain things, and I suppose he was the Republican choice to be up there, although, as he said at the beginning, he's not a fan of President Trump. He didn't vote for President Trump. Let's hear how Professor Turley interpreted this.
I'm also with meaning. It has elements. It has controlling case authority. The record does not establish obstruction in this case. That is, what my esteemed colleague said was certainly true. If you accept all of their presumptions, it would be obstruction. But impeachments have to be based on proof, not presumptions. That's the problem when you move towards impeachment on this abbreviated schedule that has not been explained to me. Why you want to set the record for the fastest impeachment.
Yeah. Why do they want to set the record for the fastest impeachment, Jason?
Because they know it's a political loser, but I think they have to satisfy the radical elements of their Democratic base. They want to get it done, hand off this turd sandwich to the Senate, and then try to do their best to get behind whoever their nominee is for president. But, you know, Raheem, in the clip you played there of Jonathan Turley, I mean, he had a number of really important things that he said today. He also systematically broke down all of the Democratic arguments, whether it be for quid pro quo or bribery or obstruction. And in a very pointed moment, when he fired back at the Democrats and said, you cannot go and say that President Trump is above the law, but then you don't have to prove anything. And that's when he went into the impeachments have to be based on proof, not presumptions, which, again, I've never heard the word presumption said so many times in a 3 or 4 week stretch here. But today really was Jonathan Turley against the world, and I think he won.
Well, and we want to go through actually some of the majority report that came out yesterday. I think in the second part of this show, we got a couple of minutes left here. Jack, anything to add this side of the commercial break?
Well, I think when you look at these people that they brought up, it really shows you that Nancy Pelosi has lost control of her party. She is being dictated to by the radicals in her party, and Carlin, is a perfect example. That's a nod to the most extreme elements.
Jack, she called this a prayerful process, the impeachment process. She says nobody came here to impeach President Trump. Nobody entered Congress to impeach President Trump. Meanwhile, they're calling constitutional experts who have, historically, like Feldman, been on the record for years of saying we should impeach him over anything we can find. Does that sound prayerful to you, Jack?
No, not at all. And I mean, she's not alone in calling for Trump's impeachment years before this process came around. I mean,
but is Pelosi being radicalized, or is she losing control?
I think she's losing control. I think there's a reason she's in Europe right now flogging global warming instead of being in Washington and standing with her peeps.
Well, she got back. She got back in time for this morning to have a conference meeting where they forced folks, other members on the Democratic conference, to check their cell phones at the door, and they kicked the staff out and basically said, rah, rah, we're ready. We're going to go and push forward with this impeachment. You know, one other thing that I want to make a point on today that really stood out to me as someone who's not a lawyer was that the Democrats chose this odd hill to die on, and that's that impeachable offenses don't have to be criminal offenses. And I think for other non-lawyers, i.e. most of the rest of the country, particularly people in these swing districts and swing states, they're not going to support an impeachment if they think that it's not a crime. And so to say, wait a minute, you're going to impeach him, but it's not even a crime? Then what about high crimes and misdemeanors? And then the messages start stepping all over each other because regular people want to say, hey, look, was there something illegal done here? Okay. Was there something as illegal done to a threshold to remove a sitting president? But if the answer is we don't have proof to anything about anything, then people are like, you're wasting our time and money.
Yeah. Look, we have a quick break coming up, but when we come back, I want to get into Noah Feldman, one of the other Democrat witnesses up there today, constitutional experts. Noah Feldman appears to be a big fan of Sharia law, that's Islamic law, writing an op-ed in the New York Times in 2008. Quote, Islamic law offered the most liberal and humane legal principles available anywhere in the world. That's a very, very bizarre thing for one of the constitutional experts going up there, alleging that they're up there defending the United States Constitution, to have written. We also want to get into this majority report that came out yesterday. There's a lot of falsehoods in that. We didn't get to a lot of it this morning on episode 57. This is episode 58 of War Room Impeachment. In the break, make sure you hit up www.warroom.org, not if you're driving. Check out all the great content there, and make sure you're subscribed on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, SoundCloud, YouTube, you name it, we're there. And we'll be right back here on the John Fredericks Radio Network and America's Voice.news after this short break.
War Room Impeachment. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. War Room Impeachment, Wednesday the 4th of December, year of our Lord 2019. I'm Raheem Kassam here in the Breitbart Embassy with Jason Miller, former Trump 2016 Senior Communications Advisor, Greg Manns, one of our brilliant researchers from within the War Room, and special surprise guest, President of Freedom Works, Adam Brandon, joining us here in the studio. I had no idea, Adam, you were going to be here.
I was literally walking by, and I was texting with Bannon, and he's like, can you go on the show right now? I'm like, well, I'm outside your place, so.
Please don't encourage. There's a lot of people that walk by this place. We're going to have a lot of special guests if people find out. We have been talking about the Judiciary Committee hearings here on Capitol Hill today, not least the 4 witnesses that were put up, 3 by the Democrats, 1 by the Republicans, and just who these people are. Noah Feldman, Pamela Karlan, and Jonathan Turley, and the other one whose name I can't remember. And what they've been saying and how it's been coming across, it's not been a particularly good day for the Democrats. Jack Maxey was on with us just before the break and saying that it looks like Nancy Pelosi may have lost control of this. Jerry Nadler was the last person she wanted in charge of any of this stuff, but of course there are conventions, I suppose, and it's the done thing to let Jerry Nadler let Jerry be Jerry, and Jerry looks like he's been Jerry. And Jonathan Turley, as the only, I think, neutral political constitutional expert, up there gave us the view of it. The rest of them taking their time to attack, almost personally attack President Trump. Pamela Karlan attacking Baron Trump. Obviously, we've got these great stories up on warroom.org with by Greg and Jack about who Noah Feldman and Pamela Karlan really are. And this one clip that I wanted to play again real quick of Pamela Karlan from the American Constitution Society back in, I think, 2006, and she gave an atrociously racist statement. I just want to play it for you guys now because Adam didn't hear it, and I want to get his view on it.
We have to seize back the high ground on patriotism and on love of our country because we have more reason than they do to love America. The rich, pampered, prodigal, sanctimonious, incurious, white, straight sons of the powerful do pretty well everywhere in the world, and they always have. But what about us? Snarky, bisexual Jewish women who want the freedom to say what we think, read what we want, and love whom we do.
Adam, are you a rich, pampered, prodigal, sanctimonious, incurious, white, straight son of the powerful?
I just laugh at that. My family comes from East 55th and Broadway in Cleveland. They, a bunch of Czechs that kind of crawled their way over here and worked in the steel mills, and my dad became a dentist. And
so yes,
I guess so. I mean, it's an amazing, it's just amazing breakdown and how I'm stunned to hear that actually that this is someone who's being called
law expert.
This is someone
sitting right there. On CNN.
Is she still on?
Oh, yeah.
This is someone who's supposed to, for the Democrats, appeal to middle America's reasoning? Really?
Jason, are you a rich, pampered, prodigal, sanctimonious, incurious, white, straight son of the powerful?
No, and I think my dad, who was a welder for 35 years, would have something to say about that as well.
And Greg Manns, who's joining us for the second segment today?
That is not correct.
Listen, the producer Dan, are you a rich, pampered prodigal? He's putting his two thumbs up. Yes, he is a rich. He's a sanctimonious something. I'll tell you that much. Look, this is utterly bizarre, chaps. I mean, like you said, Adam, this is supposed to be the person they're putting on television. They couldn't get a bump. They couldn't get a poll bump out of the public hearings over the last couple of weeks. They think this is going to do it for them.
Look, there's a lot of things happening in Middle America right now. I was looking at some of the data on since 2000, 400,000 Americans have died of opioid overdoses.
Wow.
Think of that. That's like a side of the Civil War.
Yeah.
And we're spending time on this. And I think that's what would a lot of these Democrats, we call them the Dirty 30. These are the Democrats who are sitting in districts that Trump won. One of the things that they came to Washington to do was they said we're gonna be bipartisan. We're gonna work on issues. The only thing they've got to show is impeachment. What a disaster for them.
The other one is Noah Feldman, and this story really stuck out at Greg and Jack in the War Room, and Greg and I worked on this morning. Noah Feldman wrote for the New York Times in an op-ed published on March the 16th, 2008. Remember, this is the Democrats' constitutional law expert. He wrote, Islamic law offered the most liberal and humane legal principles available anywhere in the world. No legal system has ever had worse press. It seems as if we need Sharia as Westerners have long needed Islam. Sharia has undergone an extraordinary revival in recent years. How is it that what so many Westerners see as the most unappealing and pre-modern aspect of Islam is to many Muslims the vibrant, attractive core of a global movement of Islamic revival? The explanation surely must go to the oversimplified assumption that Muslims want to use Sharia to reverse feminism and control women. Look, I'm no expert. Oh wait, I am an expert in Sharia. And if you buy my book, No Go Zones, available on Amazon.com, you will find out about Sharia. It's literally called How Sharia Law is Coming to a Neighborhood Near You. And the thing that Noah Feldman is defending here is a legal system that allows women to be treated as second-class citizens, to have 4 people corroborate a woman's claim if she is raped, apostasy leads to the death sentence. This is their constitutional law expert, Greg.
Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous.
Look, my big problem with all of this, however, chaps, is not that even necessarily that these are the guys the Democrats are putting up. It's kind of true to form for the Democrat Party nowadays. My big problem is, why didn't we know about this stuff before? Where was the Republican opposition research into who these people were, what they've said? These clips from 2006. Jason,
yeah, and part of it, look, I mean, Nadler, we didn't find out who the witnesses were even going to be until I believe it was yesterday, but still, that's no excuse why we shouldn't have had this put together. And I mean, it's amazing, even going back to a number of the witnesses that have come out during this entire process. I mean, George Kent, the State Department official, who were the ones who revealed the fact that he and his wife were tooling around in multilingual free Crimea license plates in the mean streets of Arlington, which again,
free Crimea vanity plates, while professing to be American patriots working in the American national interest.
Right. I mean, this is like low hanging fruit that you would think, whether it be the RNC or the White House or the campaign or other folks would have gotten, and we just our side definitely. I mean, we lucked out today in the fact that the Democrats face planted and Turley was so ready for TV, but we got to have our games much higher than this going forward.
Well, the other person ready today was Congressman Matt Gaetz. I want to conclude our portion on the Judiciary Committee stuff by playing you guys and getting your reactions on what Matt Gaetz did after Pamela Karlan, the Stanford racist professor who's up there for the Democrats today. Pamela Karlan attacks Barron Trump, 13-year-old son of the President of the United States. Here's what Matt Gaetz had to say about it.
Don't get to interrupt me on this time. Now, let me also suggest that when you invoke the president's son's name here, when you try to make a little joke out of referencing Barron Trump, that does not lend credibility to your argument. It makes you look mean. It makes you look like you're attacking someone's family, the minor child of the president of the United States. So let's see if we can get into the facts. To all of the witnesses, if you have personal knowledge of a single material fact in the Schiff report, please raise your hand.
Let the record show no hands are going up.
And let the record reflect no personal knowledge of a single fact. And you know what? That continues on the tradition that we saw from Adam Schiff.
That clip was made for radio. Well, good for Matt Gaetz for pushing back on that, I think. But it's again, I think it's just a shame that once again, Republicans went in underprepared. Not some of them. Jim Jordan was great, and a bunch of them are actually fantastic. But the overarching mechanism, the pushback mechanism, while CNN and the New York Times and the Washington Post all have their leads up saying 3 out of 4 constitutional professors agree the president should be impeached, which is exactly what happened today. There is no counter narrative out there that shows who are these people, what do they believe, what are their backgrounds. Okay, I'm done ragging on our side.
I have a quote from Carlin I'd love to read.
Please.
She said, quote, "Liberals tend to cluster more. Conservatives, especially very conservative people, tend to spread out, perhaps because they don't even want to be around themselves."
This is what I think Jim Jordan pulled her up on today. It's pretty extraordinary stuff. What does that say to you?
Well, again, if I was putting this together, I would be putting up, I think I overheard you guys saying this earlier, you put up some disgruntled never-Trumper Republican,
yes,
all right, to try and say you're bipartisan. It's pretty hard to take her testimony seriously when you see her previous comments. She's out for blood. This is going to be a joyful process for her to try to embarrass and nullify. When I look at this entire impeachment, this is about nullifying that election from 2016.
You would say that as a rich, pampered, prodigal, sanctimonious, and curious, white, straight son of the powerful.
White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham and Comms Director, and I think she has 4 titles at the moment, but head comms person Stephanie Grisham had a great response after First Lady Melania Trump clapped back at Professor Carlin and said the worst part is it was obviously rehearsed beforehand.
Massively.
And we even saw in one of those clips, Raheem, that you played, she made some kind of king reference and something else. So it's basically a playoff of a previous quote that she had said. So she actually thought this through. So she's in her hotel room thinking, hey, thought bubble, I'm going to go out there and diss President Trump's 13-year-old child. Let me think of a funny way to go and do this. I mean, what kind of...
No, I mean, I think it was Sheila Jackson-Lee who was talking to her at that point. And it looked like they had rehearsed it between them, because the facial expression of Jackson Lee was a sort of like, haha, yeah, you nailed it. Like, we've been practicing this. Maybe they practiced in there. I guess they didn't stay at the Trump hotel, though, right?
No, crossed on the other side of the street.
They crossed to the other side of the street. Isn't that funny, though, the rich, pampered prodigal stuff? Doesn't that remind you of something? Doesn't that remind you of homophobic, xenophobic? Remember that Hillary Clinton, the basket of deplorables speech? This is a basket of deplorables speech that was given, again, by one of these, and, she gave Hillary Clinton money. So.
And you know what? I mean, deplorable is probably the nicest thing that Professor Carlin has said about Trump voters and working class folks across the country.
Yeah, I'm a deplorable.
And the Democrats wonder why they lost Youngstown, Ohio.
Right, absolutely. Let's get on to this majority report that came out yesterday. Jason, you and I were probably the only two people in the world still up at 2 o'clock in the morning going through all of this stuff. I imagine by the look on your face you're actually up longer. I called it quits at about 2. There are certain things that stood out to me. I want to hit you with some of them and get your feedback on them. Number one, we mentioned it on the show this morning. It reads like a storybook. It reads like a novel. It's the language of it. I mean, it's pretty well written. I mean, if I bought this in a store, I'd think it's slightly boring. There aren't as many twists as I would like, but actually, it's pretty well written. It's not a bad novel, but that is not what makes a case for impeachment. What made a case against the impeachment was the minority report, which was fact, 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 fact. Now, this I also noticed is quite poorly referenced. One of the reasons it took me so long to go through this, and I was going through pages and realizing I was only getting through one page about every 5 minutes, and that's not because I'm a slow reader. I was checking the references. And if you go into the footnotes and you actually start looking up what they're citing, I found one that cited an interview between President Trump and Sean Hannity, where the document that the Democrats have released says that President Trump said one thing in that interview about Ukraine and CrowdStrike and the server, and I looked at that interview. I looked at the written transcript of that interview. I didn't just listen to it. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't glossing over it. He didn't say it. So what's to say that things in this that they're alleging as facts are even factually true if some of these false references simply don't stack up? It leans very heavily on the Marie Yovanovitch case, which I thought was quite strange, because that, again, a president removing a sitting ambassador is well within the president's rights and is not an impeachable offense. A lot of this report, I mean a significant amount, talks about how Marie Yovanovitch felt and how people around her felt and how mean the process was. I also think that there is a bit of gaslighting going on in this document. Now, there are some people on our side who have made the Ukraine claim about CrowdStrike and the server. The original claim, remember, was that the DNC didn't give their hacked server to the FBI. They gave it to another company. They gave it to CrowdStrike, and that was the problem so far as people understood it. And CrowdStrike was working closely, I believe, with the Atlantic Council, had a lot of interest in Ukraine, and that was the whole convoluted thing around that. Unfortunately, some people, not big name people either, but some people have sort of got the servers in Ukraine and all this stuff, but they lean so heavily on that in this report. They say conspiracy theory, that Russia didn't intervene, it was only Ukraine that intervened. Nobody's saying that Russia didn't try and intervene in the election. Russia tried to intervene, China tried to intervene, Iran tried to intervene, Saudi Arabia tried to intervene. I'm pretty sure that David Cameron in the United Kingdom put his 2 pennies worth in. Boris Johnson said he wouldn't shake President Trump. In fact, Boris Johnson back then said, I don't like to go to New York in case I ever bump into President Trump. That was when Boris Johnson was foreign secretary. He's now the prime minister meeting with President Trump at NATO meetings. Jason, I want to get your take. This was flimsier than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, it was the wafer-thin case, as Jonathan Turley referenced today. And look, this is the difference between a bunch of Capitol Hill retreads, partisan Capitol Hill retreads, and actual law enforcement. So, for example, when the Mueller investigation went and got the Russians for their illegally trying to manipulate online folks, and they tried to go after that troll farm in St. Petersburg, you read through that thing, and it was very clear. And again, it was a less is more. Here are the exact details, dead to rights, we have this person, game over, end of story. This reads like a really bad Nancy Drew mystery, which because they have no facts that they can point to. And so what they should have done is here's point 1, 2, 3, 4, basically lay out the case for here are the specific articles of impeachment that the House Judiciary Committee should go and pursue. But since they have nothing, this became about Ambassador Yovanovitch's hurt feelings, which, pro tip, you can get removed as ambassador anytime the president wants to go.
I also don't know if ordinary Americans want an ambassador in a war zone, in a country that is in a hot war with Russia, who gets hurty feelings that easily. Don't you want someone robust?
Yeah, I mean, you can't have an ambassador who's all curled up with a case of the SADS. I mean, that's not going to work when the times get tough. But then even to the other points, I mean, the thing that was driving the news this morning were the phone logs, in which we spent a lot of time in episode 57 going into details this morning about how these is essentially it was death by phone log or by phone tree, where Democrats said Rudy talked to Nunes, who talked to Parnas, who talked to John Solomon, means we must impeach President Trump.
Who went on the Sean Hannity show, and Trump's also been on the Sean Hannity show, and I think Jason Miller's been on the Sean Hannity show.
Right, and it was literally that flimsy where it was Solomon wrote an article 3 days later. Rudy tried calling the White House. Like, wait, what?
Solomon wrote an article. 3 days later, somebody read that article. Yeah, that's
right.
what happens with news stories.
And this, I mean, and again, they dropped this publicly. It came out yesterday, and then, of course, they had the vote within the committee last night. This is why they rush these things through, because they think if they can hand to the lemmings, i.e. the mainstream media journalists, who are going to hold up and wave this and be like 300 pages.
Chris Cuomo, the guy I got to admit that he got something wrong about the CrowdStrike founder. He admitted to me on Twitter today that he actually got something wrong. These guys are lemmings.
Yeah, and they hold up the report and 300 pages. This must be something bad. No, it's basically the House Intel Committee trying to kill trees. I mean, they're just literally chopping down trees and destroying the environment by printing this nonsense, but there's nothing there. This is why the Democrats' case is so flimsy. This is why Jonathan Turley wrecked them so savagely today. This is why Matt Gaetz and the other Republicans came through and called it out in such stark, distinct terms. The Democrats have no case for impeachment on anything.
What is the elevator pitch on impeachment? If you're stuck in an elevator with Nancy Pelosi and you got a few floors to go up, what is her case? What can she say very quickly?
Orange man bad.
Yeah.
Adam, I want to get to you though on this phone logs thing. Look, Freedom Works, your organization, how long has it been around?
The original predecessor is the mid-1980s, but in our current act, it was Citizens for a Sound Economy and Empower America merged and created Freedom Works around 2001.
About 2001, in its modern iteration, lots of libertarians, classical liberals, people who are concerned about the protection of the Constitution, civil liberties, their constitutional rights. How do they feel about Adam Schiff's committee subpoenaing telephone companies to get the phone logs of journalists, private citizens, journalist sources, the President of the United States, the President of the United States private lawyer, the head of the House Intel Committee, and not just getting them from AT&T in very short order, publishing them?
The thing that the president said when he was campaigning that got everyone real comfortable with him was when he started going after the swamp. This is the swamp. These college professors, they are in the swamp. They want to be close to their buddies on the Judiciary Committee. And another phrase that gets used a lot is the deep state. Well, a lot of our base is very, very concerned about that. I mean, if you have a constitutional order, you have a constitutional order. And people who work in the administration, they're supposed to be cogs in the wheel, they're not supposed to be the people making the decisions.
We have about a minute left. Adam, how does your audience, who I guess probably weren't that keen on Trump in the primaries in 2015-16, how do they feel now? What's going on out there?
When we were surveying them, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul were the most popular amongst our membership. But as soon as Trump got the nomination, there was enough in there that they were like, "We'll go with this." And where they are today is that he's a lot better than they expected. They look at the deregulatory agenda. I think overall what they were really looking for is a fighter, someone who's going to take our principles and fight. And if Donald Trump is one thing, he is a fighter. And so they look at this as a man who's under attack by the entire swamp, the entire establishment, and that's why they're ready to support him in this fight.
Where do people go?
freedomworks.org, or our most active community of over 5 million people is on Facebook. Come and find us there.
Jason, Greg, any last words?
No, great to see the web traffic on warroom.org moving in a big way today. Of course, the podcast continues to surge in the charts. So if you're not already subscribing, please do it now.
Absolutely. Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play. Listen, if you're taking active steps out there and you want to do something, make sure your friends, family, everyone is subscribed to War Room Impeachment. www.warroom.org on the interwebs gives you the easiest way for it. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't miss it.